Good morning, everybody. So, to start this workshop, I would request all of you to switch on your video cameras for, say, 5 minutes. We'll take a couple of pictures also as well for our participants for the workshop. Uh, Sumedha, Ankita, Shreya, Shomi, Somsuvara. Can you hear me? Yeah, just for like 5 minutes. Ankita, Shreya, Sumedha, I can see you. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Shreya. Hi, Ankita. Yeah, please switch on your video camera so we can see you. And we want this to be an interactive session. It's not like you guys will just be listening to sir throughout. So, you can, wherever you feel the need that you want to express something, you can unmute yourself or you can raise your hand, put your whatever you want in the chat box. Somsavara, Shreya, we still can't see you and show me. Okay, show me saying she has a network problem. No problem. Let it be others. So, are we taking screenshots of these? Okay, so welcome everybody to our session of people analytics workshop. And we would want that you learn in this hands-on, we have 6 modules which we'll be covering. So before that, I would want to introduce, I am Shatakshi from Talent Synergy Solutions. And we have our team here of Gargi Nath and Pratna Karmakar. And our speaker for today, who is also our co-founder, is Mr. Abhinandan Mukherjee. So I'll give a brief introduction of our speaker. Meet Mr. Abhinandan Mukherjee, who is a dynamic HR transformation leader with over 19 years of experience across global organizations like Cognizant Technology Solutions and World Bank Group. He has worked in human resource operations, technology and transformation, and global shared services, helping businesses modernize their people practices and drive data-led decision making. Mr. Abhinandan is also the founder of Talent Synergy and has been instrumental in building ecosystems that support CHROs and CXOs in areas like capability mapping, upskilling, culture assessment, and leadership development. He is a certified OKR practitioner and an artificial intelligence machine learning strategist with a keen eye for analytics, dashboards, and digital HR solutions. Through his community-based learning approach, he empowers young professionals and students to become industry ready by blending practical tools with some real world exposure. So, for today's workshop, let's directly get into that. That is a people analytics workshop where you start thinking like an HR analyst. You do learn HR data cleaning, some part of Excel for people analytics, stats which speak, that is the art of HR data storytelling, and you deep dive into talent attrition performance, HR data privacy and security. Where do we stand? So we will be equipping you with some tools and frameworks which are used by top HR professionals across various industries in this particular workshop. Okay. We will be having 6 modules and those will be covered. So with that, I would request Abhinandan sir to start the workshop.
So thanks everyone. Just quick check if I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, great. So why don't we quickly go around? I know some of them. I know Shomi. I think Shamshubra. I think they've joined earlier also. But why don't we quickly go around the table? Just one or two lines of introduction about each one of the participants. Then I know, who's joining, right? What's your background? Can we do that? Anyone can
Yeah,
start. Either you use the chat or you can just unmute and
let's
speak.
start with you, Sumedha. You can unmute yourself and
I have recently completed my MBA in HR from IISWM, and currently I am looking for a job.
Okay. Next.
So next would it be Ankita?
Yeah, hello, morning, everyone. Even I met Mr. Mukherjee a couple of days back. He was in our
Right.
college ISWBM for a workshop. It was very insightful. So, I have an English literature background and I have worked in marketing, and currently I'm pursuing MBA HRM from ISWBM. Thank you so much.
Good to have you on board, Ankita. Shreya, can you also unmute yourself and switch on your camera and introduce yourself? Okay, Shreya is messaging that uh, hi, I'm Shreya Basu, currently working as an HR manager. Okay. Due to some technical in Jusian technologies. Sorry, due to technical issues, I couldn't switch on my camera. Okay, hi Shreya, welcome on this workshop with us. Uh, so from Subra, can you also give a small introduction? Sorry if I'm getting the pronunciation wrong. Or maybe some technical issues at her end as well. Ranveer, hi. So can you switch on your camera? We've started the workshop and introduce yourself maybe in one or two lines.
Like I am like currently the outside, so is it like okay to listen like after that?
Yes. Yeah,
That's
that's
fine.
fine. I mean, yeah.
Just one or two lines about yourself, like what are you doing or working or studying.
Yes, so like myself, Ranabir Mal, and currently I am working in a like IT like based company that is the service based. Like it is in located in Hyderabad, and currently I am working as a HR coordinator there. And like I am like working in the HR, particularly in the HR audit and HR analytics field. And along with this, like I am currently pursuing my MBA from Indian Institute of Technology Partner. So this year I have enrolled. Yes, that's all about. Thank you.
Thanks, Ranveer. Good to have you on board. Um, so yeah, these are the participants. Show me like she has some network issues. So
Uh, so why don't we also introduce ourselves, right? So Satakshi, you, Gargi, and Prarthana, so that everyone is aware. I think there's one more person in Read Me, right? Read AI. Okay, that's someone's AI. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Satakshi, you, Gargi, and Prarthana. Why don't we also do a quick round for
so
each one of you?
yeah. Hi, I'm Shatakshi Srivastav. I'm working in Talent Synergy Solutions as a operations manager and a client relations manager for past 1 year, and also I'm part of FresherRank's our initiative, CSR initiative for freshers as a program manager for past 2 months. And I have completed my MBA from ISWBM 2 years back. And before that, I was working is as a senior lecturer in hospitals. I've worked in Nepal and I've worked in Bombay. So that's about it. Thanks everyone for joining in. We hope to have a very interactive session today with you guys. So over to you guys.
Hi, I am Pratana. I am working for Talent Synergy and FresherRank both. I am with Talent Synergy for almost 4 years. I am working as a lead analyst, and this workshop is actually related to the analytics field and all. So, yeah, have a good time in this workshop. Over to Gargi.
Gargi.
Gargi. Okay, Gargi is messaging. Hi, I'm Gargi Nath. I'm working as a program manager here. So basically, Gargi is our program manager in Talent Synergy Solutions. And I guess she's having some network issue.
Audio issues.
Yeah, no problem.
This. So which is fine. Fine. So let's start off. I think I know we have time till 12 o'clock, but we'll keep it short, and we always would want to keep it interactive. So I have a brief introduction about myself, or what I call, my journey. But before that, can we ask participants to just type in the chat box, right? Saying, okay, why did you join this session? What do you want as a key takeaway from this session? One, two, three, whatever. Uh, Anything that comes to your mind saying, okay, this is what I want to take back from this session. You can use the chat box. You can also unmute and speak, no harm. It's a Sunday morning, so obviously, we have time with family, personal time, all of that. Still, you all have joined. So I just want to understand what's that one thing that you want to take away from this session.
Anybody? Sumedha, Ankita, Ranveer.
Yes, so as it's HR data analytics, and nowadays analytics is very important. And in my fourth semester also, I have completed one paper in HRIS. So I would like to know more about it. So that's why I joined in this webinar. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Anyone else?
Ankita is saying, honestly, analytics looks like a very fancy term. I think I would like to understand more about it and in depth. Ranveer is saying, what is the current scope of HR analytics and how to switch in that roles? That's why he's joined. And there are a couple of people who are still typing. Shreya Basu is saying, wanted to know little details about HR analytics.
Okay. Want to know details? Fine.
Shreya, can you tell us what kind of details?
That's fine. I think
Just general.
let's keep defining. Yeah. Right. Okay. So let's get into the session. So I think I'll need some help, Satakshi and Gargi, to read out any comments, anything that may come up. So if I start
Yes,
presenting,
Abhi,
then
yeah, I'll let you
then
know.
yeah, this doesn't. So I promise to keep it to about 30-35 minutes, and then we can obviously have questions as we go along. I have few slides, so we'll start with that. And like I think Satakshi called out, we have these modules, right? So give me a second. Now you all should be able to see it full screen. Uh,
Yes, it's
Can you
visible.
see screen? Okay, done. Awesome. So we'll come back to the screen because I have one question that I want to ask all of you, right? But okay, all of you introduced yourselves, so I think it's always good that I start with what's my story, right? So what you see on the screen is not my resume; it's kind of how my journey has been, right? And that is something that all of you should start thinking about in terms of HR analytics, the analytical bent of mind, the acumen, whatever you call it. At the end of the day, the entire intent of going through HR analytics, people analytics, workforce analytics, whatever you call it, and we will define these terms in few more slides. One thing is important is what's the story, right? What's behind us, right? Why are we doing certain things? Why did we do, right? That never comes out in your resume. So one key thing that I keep telling everyone in any of these sessions is that always have the storyline at the back of your mind. Data analytics will support that, right? But there has to be a story. So if you look at my story, largely, I'm originally from Calcutta, uh, currently kind of settled in Chennai. I've gone through a lot. I've done my masters in HR from ISWBM, but a lot of people know about this. But I actually have a undergraduate degree in earth science. Somehow never got the passion to pursue earth science as a career for some reason, and got into HR. I did few years of work before I did my postgraduate in ISWBM, so I know I have my now it's called MBA HRM, and when I used to do it, it used to be called MHRM. But nevertheless, it is one of the most prestigious courses in India as such, because that is the original MSW course or DSW, if I am not wrong, which a lot of social at that point in time in 1940s or the 50s, I think it used to be called DSW, Diploma in Social Welfare, and many of the HR stalwarts at that point in time had passed out from our department. But yeah, I think then joined Cognizant, moved to World Bank after 9.5 years, have done almost all roles possible in HR, shared services, operations, policy, process administration. I've done a lot of HR technology throughout. Uh, and as part of that, why do I think I'm eligible to speak as part in this session is because I've handled large sets of data. So for Cognizant, when it was almost 150,000 people, I was managing the entire HRIS, not just the data part, but also the improvements, how data talks to other systems. I've seen the entire journey of manual forms, clearance forms when someone is leaving, or manual provident fund form nominations to what it is today, right? The entire digitized version. Uh, I'd seen organizations growing from 50,000 to 150,000, right? In fact, when I left in 2016, Cognizant was almost 200,000 people by then. So I've seen that journey and how organizations scale up, right, for as part of these functions. Did a course in AI/ML, did another MBA program from a private university in San Francisco. Uh, Left World Bank in 2021 while in Singapore and started my own venture. We used to initially do talent development programs, learning programs, micro skill based learning programs for HR professionals. But we've moved on. Batch Free is something that is a recruitment platform, but it's not just a standard recruiting platform. There are many other things. So anyone who is keen, just drop me a note and we'll connect back you to the Batch Free. 2024 is when we rebranded Venpower into Talent Synergy and said Talent Synergy has to do much more. So we bring talent operations together across various elements and support the CXOs, CHROs in small or mid-sized organizations who cannot either afford a very large and heavy HR team or they don't have the expertise, right? So we bring all that together. And at this point in time, we are in fact building HR agents, which are AI based. So we are hoping that in about a couple of years, one or two layers of the initial HR roles will not have any of the mundane transactional elements. They would obviously have to do much more deeper elements, human touch. And in fact, we have two interns who are right now doing a case study internship with us to find out what's changing and how roles across some of the topics in HR or key elements in HR are changing, to build case studies saying, okay, what and how should we prepare for in terms of the future. So that's what I've been through. um, Now, okay, so coming back to the previous slide, so while the module, I think you all would have seen this in the brochure, in the flyer also. But if you see that background, right, the vegetables background, this is a theme I consciously chose when I was preparing this slide pack. And there is a keen, or let me say, there is a very, very relatable element between vegetables, humans consuming food, and HR analytics or any of the analytics as such. Can anyone type in the chat box or speak up? What do you think is the commonality between the theme of the slide and the theme of the workshop?
So basically, what sir is asking is, this picture which is put up here, is there any relation with the theme of the slide, that is unlocking workforce analytics?
In general
Any wild
analytics as
guesses is
such.
also fine.
Yeah, and all guesses are good guesses. Okay, I mean that's one more piece that we always follow in FresherRank, is that you have to keep guessing.
Ankita Chatterjee is writing a wild guess. We analyze vegetables a lot before buying them. Shalini, a fresh concept.
Okay. Okay. And why do we analyze? We analyze because we want to buy the good stuff, right? We want to use the good stuff when we're preparing food, and we want to consume healthy, good food, right? That's why we analyze. So you're on the right track. So the point is that if we don't do that analysis before buying, or what's going in our food, it's garbage in, garbage out. I'm sure all of you would have heard this, in one of your first computer classes or wherever, right? So that is exactly what happens when you have people analytics or you are venturing into the world of analytics as such. If you do not have your data right, which is basically the entire foundational element of analytics, you would never ever get the right story. Okay. So that's what I thought. This theme, while it may look very unrelated, I thought it's very important for us to also start correlating two unrelated information and put it together to see, are we making it, does it make sense? And that is exactly what
Ranbir,
you will have to do. Go ahead, Sabanchi. I can't see also.
Ranbir here is saying
Yeah.
it indicates the different potential.
Yes.
And whoever's raised their hand, please go ahead and tell
I think
us what you
I
want.
saw Shomshubra, I think, was raising that.
It's left the chat. Okay. Some Shobra is left the chat. No problem. Maybe some network issue. So if there's anything else, please type in the chat box.
Please feel free to continue doing that. So, and before we move on, I think if you all see the slides on the right, I won't let you guess, but believe me, the most amount of time is spent by HR professionals on module 2, which is cleaning up junk data. And I've done that hands-on for years together. I've seen large data sets, HR, personal data, performance, compensation, all of that data, and junk data, cleaning up data, because if data is not clean, we don't get the output correctly, just like the food element we talked about. Okay, so let's quickly move on. One thing that I definitely want to introduce is you would keep hearing these varied terms. And in fact, if you see, right, we are using the term workforce analytics as the theme of the session, and we intend to continue doing so. Why? Are these all same? No. These are used interchangeably many times, but all of us should know as HR professionals or even basic professionals, because today it's not just HR people. Every manager has a HR role in them, because they're managing a team, they're managing the team's performance, they're managing the team's compensation, career pathing, all of those, right? So that's why it's important for each one of us to be aware. So what you see here typically is HR analytics is the HR process efficiency most of the times, right? And that's where if you see the primary focus. And end user are HR professionals. So if I'm a talent acquisition team member, then I have talent acquisition matrix, process matrix, people matrix, and talent acquisition uh, versus HR business partnering versus HR operations, all of those, right? People analytics is more the behavioral people data. Okay, why people are leaving, why people are joining, what's our organization, let's say, joining ratio, so actual matrix around people. Uh, Workforce analytics is more strategic, which means that, okay, what is business telling us, right? Business is telling us we will have work in Q3, right? So we need 150 Java developers, or say DevOps guys. Now, what does that mean for the CHRO? The CHRO then goes back and sees, okay, what kind of people are there internally in the organization? Can we fulfill this 150 requirement? So there's a business planning, there's a manpower planning, and all of those. But what you see is a lot of strategic element that goes into the workforce analytics. So that these are pure differences. Sometimes you will see these are being used interchangeably. In casually, it's okay, but when we get to the real nitty gritties, it's important for us to know the difference. Now, while we say this, I think one of the things that's favorite. This is one of my these next two slides are one of my favorite slides. It's very important for us to first of all understand the functional areas in HR. Not only that, it's also important for us to understand how the employee looks at it. Now, while we, each one of us could be employees in our own right in the organization, we are HR folks. So we need to understand the employee angle, we need to understand the functional, the HR angle, the organization angle. So what you see in the blue boxes, right, on top, which says employee life cycle phase, employees or individuals get hired, they get deployed for work, they continue to work, then they are given rewards, compensation, career pathing, promotion, all of that, and then finally they take a decision to leave, let's say, and they move on. In the reward, sometimes in the deployment, even in the engage, training, and all of those things come in, which is training typically, and some of these can be interchangeably mapped to any of those three life cycles. Now, for each of these life cycles, it's important that, okay, which HR function is supporting that life cycle. And the intent of keeping this employee life cycle, we all should keep this in mind, because for the employee, we can't be making it extremely complex, right? Because for them, at the end of the day, it's the organization, right? Doesn't matter whether recruitment is doing it or workforce management is doing it. They're two related functions in the employee's mind. So when you all become HR professionals or whoever is already working, I'm sure you are keeping it simple for employees and letting them know, okay, what is your problem? Come and tell us. And you will see a lot of these employee query management and all of these as centralized functions, which are then routing the queries to different teams who respond to the employee. But for the employee, there's one place where they go and start raising queries or come to, come for answers to their questions. So what you see on the screen, I don't want to read out all of these, but this is something that you all should always take back. Remember, there are many functions in HR. So that's the top part of the slide. The bottom part of the slide typically calls out the tools and platforms that are related to each one of these HR functional areas or points of delivery. Various organizations call them differently. It could be HR department, sub department, functional areas. In World Bank, we used to call it points of delivery, right? Pods. So pods were much smaller elements under each one of these, but that's what it can be called. The bottom part about the systems, again, knowing these systems is important. So I heard someone said, talked about HRIS and knowing more about, HR analytics and all. One of the first few things you all should understand or we all should appreciate is there are different functions in HR. Data is owned by, generated by, maintained by, and also at the end of the day, if we don't need the data, purged, right, which is get rid of the data by each one of these functional areas or functions. A recruitment data is owned by the recruitment team, right? However, at the end of the day, the data can be used for multiple purposes. But when I need a joining document, which is, let's say, your last drawn payslip before rolling out an offer, that that document or data, when it's coming in, it's owned by the recruitment team. Suddenly, a compensation team will not go and start asking, or if they're asking, they're actually playing the recruitment role. So each functional area has different systems through which they collect data. Why is it important for us to appreciate that? Because each one of these data sets, each one of these systems is managed by the respective function, and they have a data policy, they have how they maintain the data, how the data is used. All of this will make sense in the last slide when I cover that employee, that typically are data privacy, data protection, all of those. Because if any of you are working for any of the organizations which has an European citizen or your any other national sitting in Europe, right? Something called GDPR, which is general data protection rules in regulations. That's a European Union regulation. Your data management for that employee comes under GDPR. And it's extremely stringent how you maintain the data, what you collect it for, what you use it for. So each of these systems need to align with those data policies, and someone has to own it up. Why have I mapped each one of these to each one of the systems to each one of those functional areas? Because the functional head for each one of these areas actually owns up that data. They're responsible for that data. So net, right? Before I move on to the next slide, it's important for us to know or have a holistic view of what is data, where does it come from, who is owning it up, before we just start analyzing the data and giving out some results, right? And who is authorized to give that data? No one else other than the functional owner of that data you should accept the data from. So let's say a simple example was, I can't name the organization, but one of those which I was working for, uh, you know the immigration data, which typically is your passport, your nationality, if you have any active valid visas, work related, non-work related, all of these are immigration, or sometimes they call it global assimilation, transition, employee transition, whatever it. But these are immigration or employee data. It's managed by the immigration team or the travel team when work-related travels. Apart from them, no one else is authorized to give that data. Let's say, what is your work permit? Are you eligible to work in a particular country or not? It's only the immigration team which can certify. So if at any point in time in your career or in your work program, right, you get that data, someone else validating, always go back to the data owner and get a validation. That's important, because tomorrow they know the right source where to get the details checked, validate, and then confirm on the data. So all of these are elements which will become very important when you start just handling HR analytics, HRIS, all of these. And data breaches happen, people give wrong information, and as a result of that, organization takes them, right? So that's why it's important for us to start here. The next slide is slightly more detailed view of what you see as the areas, but typically I think I give this. Anyway, we will share the slide back so you all will have this. So there are smaller, the HR functional areas, typically I like covering it because in the earlier career, you may have worked in some of them, or we may know that what other functions do, but many of us have not seen the length and breadth of what you see in this slide, right? Large organizations have this level of detailing. So there are smaller organizational units which are HR functional areas, which are called centers of expertise, centers of excellence, these kind of things, which includes the top four boxes that you see, right? The bottom seven boxes that you see are the employee facing units. That's why we call them operational units. The centers of expertise do not, largely, they do not interact directly with employees as such on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, there could be questions which goes back to them for clarification, they come back, policy, all of that, right? In fact, HR policy development is one thing that I see, we've not included here, but also should be included. Many times the compensation benefits total rewards team owns up the policy also. The operational units actually on a regular basis are touching the employees' lives. So they continue interacting with the employees every day. What you see on the right is a global shared services breakdown, which is the last on the extreme right of the operational units. And these are, that's where you see SS, which is shared services at the end. If you see from top to bottom, these are largely one of the operational units or one of the centers of expertise, but then with a SS mentioned, right? So let's say payroll SS. Payroll SS is basically payroll shared services. So in big organizations, compensation benefits do not run the payroll themselves. There is another smaller unit which consumes compensation information in the system, what is given by the compensation team, and runs the payroll. So these are also set up because there has to be a maker checker process. Someone who creates the data cannot process the data. So there are multiple of these from regulations standpoint. So in one of the organizations, again, the observation was compensation benefits team was running payroll. So there is one regulation or standard called SOX, which is called Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes-Oxley is a US standard, like our ISO and kind of standards. And when we did in one of the Sarbanes-Oxley SOX audits, it was highlighted that compensation benefits team is deciding the compensation. And they were also updating the compensation in the records when someone was joining. And then they were also processing payroll. So what it meant was, without anyone else knowing, someone from the team of Comp and Ben in that setup or workflow could be deciding the compensation, updating the compensation, processing the confirmation compensation, and then it goes to finance for payout. Right? Obviously, taxation, all of that applies, but still. So they said it's not good. The maker checker is not there. So then payroll shared services outsourcing had to be done. So within the organization. So a lot of these things. So if you see any of the transactional, repetitive, SLA, which is standard level agreement, all of these work is done by a global shared services organization. So this is largely, again, you should keep in mind between the earlier slide and this slide. Okay. Now, how do we define? You all have seen the earlier comparison that I had put there. This
Sir,
is one more
sir,
level of detail.
Someone saying, could you please repeat the meaning of SS? Sumedha is asking, and Shalini is also
Ah,
saying, can the shared services be done a third party vendor?
yeah. Thanks. Uh, so I can definitely repeat. So SS means shared services. So if you see the operational units, the one on the extreme right is called global shared services. So actually the table on the right, and I think one arrow is missing here, the talent acquisition SS till the project management PMO SS is a breakdown of global shared services, smaller units under global shared services. So I will include that when I send it out, so it will be clear. SS stands for shared services. Second question is yes. In fact, there are organizations which does shared services as a service, GSS as a service. In fact, if you all have read or if you all are following the news, which all of you should actively do, is what's happening in the business world, right? How are organizations now looking at their organization structure and out of which the HR structure evolves, right? So, in fact, this is what we're talking of HR functional areas, right? But organizations today are doing it for their entire business. Let's say IT job. Why did outsourcing start off as a concept? Because work was costlier doing it in a particular geography. If I outsource that and there is no dependency in terms of legal, regulational, and all of those, I can get the work done somewhere else, which is at a better efficiency, higher productivity, and lesser cost. So yes, there are organizations. In fact, Talent Synergy is in the business of shared services outsourcing. So we do quite a few. We do any of these payroll, activities except for the payroll shared services as a support to organizations. It could be part of the organization design. It could be part of also any of those elements. It could be a cost element. It could be saying, I don't want to have a team doing all of these because it becomes heavy. So I'll outsource it to someone who does it better than me at a lesser cost. Yes. And a lot of organizations are starting to do it. So there are many of these things that are, let's say, performance generally is not done outside unless you're doing entire thing for the organization. Payroll, lot of payroll work is done outside the organization. Even many big organizations do it. Immigration is another thing which is not generally done outside the organization, but there is a specialized team sometimes supporting all the travels. In fact, travel partners being outside the organization is a common practice, right? So Amex is, let's say, one of the most prevalent common supporting organization for travel and all of that. So yes, it is very much possible. It's happening, and it will continue to happen more and more because smaller organizations just don't want to do all of that, except the core HR work. Let's say business partnering, right? Recruitment. Even then, they have recruiters inside, but others supporting them. So that's what's happening. So again, I don't want to go through all of these definitions, but yes, the workforce analytics have made the size slightly bigger because that has a broader element than HR analytics and people analytics. That's how I think if you look at these areas, keep the first comparative slide in mind, so it's easier for you to compare, right, as to what's the focus, who are consumers, right, of this each one of these analytics. The other thing that happens is that you all should understand is some of this data is just descriptive, right? So there is a maturity model from 1 to 4. And if you look at it, it's on a scale of what's the value it's providing and what is the complexity it brings, each one of these levels bring with it. One is, okay, data is happening, something is happening, we are seeing data, we are observing data, and there's a lot of visualization also, let's say, we are able to do it. In fact, Prarthana here has done a lot of those, for let's say, in fact, Prarthana here is doing a project across an entire HR life cycle. We have 500 scenarios that was built, and I don't know if Shamshubra was able to get back on this one. You all may remember I mentioned, yeah, Shomi and Shamshubra, I know them. They have been doing some of these projects along with Prarthana for us, right? So the pitch that I'm trying to make is if any of you want to do hands-on project, feel free to reach out to us, right? There are multiple things that are happening, not just HR analytics, there are other areas as well. Coming back, okay. So the first is data is happening real time. We are seeing it, we are seeing reports, we are seeing data. That's one way, right? We're just consuming. The next level is the diagnostic, right? Saying, okay, why is it happening? Why does this happen? So it's very important. Doing a root cause analysis is important, whether it's working or not working, both ways, right? The next level, which is the third level, is what's likely to happen, right? So that we are prepared. Okay, what could happen? That's the trend. In everything, there's a trend analysis, and okay, we know that this based on a month on month trend, and if we go back to previous years month on month trend, we can say, okay, next month possibly the attrition or number of people leaving will be higher, right? Something like that. Now, the prescriptive is something that is where I think we as HR professionals add a lot of value, but then you need to have that acumen of the business, right? Where the business is going, what are we doing around the people data, business analytics, all of this, and say, okay, what can be done about it, right? Or what should we do then? If we are seeing this, now we know the cause, we know the where it's going next. Now what can be done or what should be done, right? So that's the maturity model. Now all of these are not same. You cannot just reach to a prescriptive stage right on day one. You need to go in this order so that you have the right data. And again, it goes back to that cooking question, analysis before even buying the vegetables, right? Okay. Yeah, this is again just the tools that are used in certain of these, so you can refer to this when we share the slides. here. So now we actually starting module one, right? All of this before was foundational. And again, there are not too many slides, just I think 2 or 3 slides for each of the modules. But I think what's important is for us to develop that, you would have heard all of this data driven decisions and all of that, right? But what does it really mean? It means that we are also able to consume data, right? So it doesn't matter which functional background or educational background we come from. We have to understand data. We have to understand people. And I think when I went to SWBM last week, I think I was telling there, right, that Excel, that's your backbone. Okay, whichever system you use, very important, right? Develop that analytics bent of mind. But what we do is move away from just becoming a support function, right? Saying someone wants a report, I give a report. Days are gone for those, right? So if you see this table on the right, uh, this is what on the instinct based is what people used to say, let's say 2 years, 3 years, 5 years back. Uh, and even now, you would find even employees making statements like, we don't have enough training, right, to do certain roles, certain jobs. And that is where I think HR people have moved beyond these instinct based elements and say, okay, uh, if we are saying that we don't have enough training, how many trainings have you taken, right? If you go to your LMS, stands for learning management system. Uh, so if you go into your learning management system, have you done have you taken certain assessments, right? And all of you here, if you've not taken the assessment, I think we'll share assessments. In fact, we have a whole list of assessments. We actually, in fact, have an analytics assessment also. But overall, I think it's important for us to understand the skill gaps. So just saying we don't have training doesn't make sense, right? We have to see, okay, what are the skills required to do your job, which is typically a job description, versus what skills does someone have? And that is done through these skill based assessment, skill gap analysis. And based on that, right, we administer training. After the training, there's a little bit of, let's say, application based application stage, which is we apply what we learned, and then come back and maybe do one more assessment, saying, okay, that's a post learning assessment, and finally go and apply that in the real job, and manager gives a feedback saying, yes, Abhinandan really moved from, let's say, level 2 to level 3, or a level 2 to level 4 after this training. So that's where HR organizations have evolved. So clearly, I think there's a lot more data elements that goes in, rather just saying or making a statement in pure English, right? So if you see today, the left side, if we come back, I think the questions that you have at the bottom, right, are kind of questions that we all should start asking. So rather than saying people are joining and leaving within 6 months, right? That's a reality. We will see one of the use cases, case studies in the next few slides, saying high attrition is something. Attrition is how many people are leaving. So if you see this statement also, data shows 25% attrition in BU2. The BU2 is just a business unit, right? So I think one of the things that the way a recruiter asks is, okay, if it's 25%, then within what time? Are these people leaving immediately, after 1 year, after 2 years? So let's say someone says, no, this 25% is the first 6 to 10 months, or the first 1 year. So then the breakup of, okay, what does 1 year mean? Because the initial part of 1 year is very important for an employee and the organization. It's important to engage them well, which means employee engagement is low. It could actually start even before the person joined, right? So the recruiter has some role to play in it. The onboarding team has some role to play in it. The HR business partner definitely has a lot of role to play in it. But each one of them will look at different kinds of data, right? The HR business partner will see, okay, what is the engagement? Where did the engagement drop? The onboarding team will see, okay, was onboarding experience seamless? Is the person in a remote location? Then did my remote onboarding process fail somewhere? Did we assign a buddy to the person? Those kind of questions. The recruiter will go back and ask questions like, which hiring channel did this person come from? Because for the recruiter's mind, the effectiveness of someone leaving within 6 months is has to improve. It cannot be that 25%. And 25% is a very high number for that matter, but even whatever it is. So they want to break down. If it's I, as a recruiter, I can source from my own network, my own connections, right? That's a low cost from an organization standpoint. Organization only pays my salary, and I hire people, right? I go through the entire leg and hire people. The other thing could be I hire from Naukri or any of these platforms, right? Batch Free could be one of them, right? There's a cost that comes with each one of these platforms, right? So which means it's slightly higher cost than just paying my salary. My salary is getting paid, and that platform cost is coming in. The third area could be a campus recruitment. Fourth area could be a manpower or some recruitment partner is supporting. Campus again is typically low cost, but if you look at the recruitment partners or hiring firms, they come at a very high cost, right? Now, if they don't do this analysis, they don't know which channel is working out right for which kind of roles, for what level of people. So there are very, very, in fact, Shomi is here, right? So Shomi can vouch for it that it's not just at this level, but the detailing goes out to which skills are we hiring for. Some of the hiring firms support only certain skills because they specialize in that. They are masters of that skill. So we need to get to that level of detailing, right? So that's what this slide is all about. Think there's yeah. So these are again I think some questions and HR analyst if you all see here, right? I would urge all of you to look at that as a mindset, and that's the if you see the subtitle, if I can call it, of the slide, it says it's an analyst mindset. Every role in HR needs to have that analyst mindset, right? So then, okay, what's the problem? What are we solving? Are we seeing any patterns? When are we seeing the patterns? And if you correlate this with the maturity model, is going in that order, right? First, understand the problem, maybe look at it, explore some ideas as to why it's happening, move to a stage saying, okay, what do you think will happen next? And then, okay, can we do something about it? So there's one of the tools that I was part of, and then we are building something at our end right now is predicting, someone leaving. So it's called early attrition predictor, or it used to be called early warning system in the organization that we worked for, and it actually includes, I think, 13 thematic data points and gives a red, amber, green kind of an indication saying Abhinandan possibly will leave in the next, 2-3 months or whatever. And 2-3 months could vary, but then I'm saying that identification in a large organization that Abhinandan will leave is important, right? Because Abhinandan could be in a client-facing role, he could be in a very critical role, niche skill. So a lot of other people get impacted, work gets impacted. So it's not just I'm saying an analyst mindset, but organizations have started developing tools and technologies, right, to even predict some of these. Apart from just looking at larger HR data sets, the core capabilities of the skill set that you have is important. Uh, Purely from the analytical mindset. And if you see the fourth one, right, storytelling with numbers, that's what I started with, right? Correlate, curiosity, questioning, correlate different data sets together. So the same again, the vegetable and the HR analytics correlation. Go back and tell a story. You can typically follow this model. This is one of the standard models. And none of this data or information that I'm talking about is like very, very IP and owned by us. It's commonsensical. If you look at it, you'll get a lot of the similar responses if you go and ask any of the chat GPTs and any of the tools for that matter, largely. So here's a little bit of, let's say, a scenario that I want to walk you all through, right? So how does it really happen? So let's say there's a scenario, attrition rate as the number of people leaving in a particular duration has gone up from 18 to 27%. If that is a scenario, and the CHRO says, okay, what can we do about it, or what to do next, why, and all of that. So the first thing that we understand is that within less than 1 year tenure, people are leaving, and attrition is rising. 9% is almost, let's say, a 50% increase in attrition percentage. If we look at, so then we need to understand, okay, what's the data set? Who are leaving? What kind of people are leaving? Where did they come from? Are they kind of hire? Where did we hire them from? Which hiring source? Which business unit were they part of? Even in the business unit, which team were they in? Which manager were they under? Right? Which location are they in? Which office do they go to? Right? It could be as much of details, right? And like I mentioned, I think if you reach out to Prarthana, she can give you at least 500 scenarios upfront. Like in the next 1 hour, she can show you 500 scenarios across these, not just this, across HR analytics scenarios. So that's happening in organizations today, right? And then you identify the patterns, see where it's coming from, go and ask people, take feedback, and then that's why you kind of do it step three, right? Some of these could be actually non-controllable or uncontrollable, or some of these could be actually controllable, right? And believe me, as HR professionals, paying higher salary is the easiest controllable factor that you can have. So if you some point in time think that people leave for salaries, yes, but then you can still do to some extent, may not be fully. Now, but there are other factors, many other factors, which are again very people driven, right? People related. And if it's about, let's say in this scenario, we saw that okay, people are leaving within 1 year because they don't have clarity in terms of how their career will shape up in that particular business unit, in the role that they are joining, and all of that. So then say, okay, then maybe we need to give a lot of more information about how the career pathing happens, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months. So there could be a lot of more information maybe that's not being shared, right? So one of the things could be that we did not tell them how the organization will is looking into their career pathing. So then you basically include a lot of those information, have sessions, answer more questions, and then go ahead and see if that improves, right? So if you look at the left, I think it's just recommending that okay, break it into steps and do something about it, and then come back to a solution, right, and see if it's improving. So on the right, I think one of the things that you all should do is, I'll just probably give it you all don't have to actually do it and share the results now. You can do that, but you can choose any one of these three, right? Saying okay, attrition we already have seen, but offer to joining, any recruiter has offered to joining as one of the biggest challenges in the last 2-3 years, and I think that's going to continue for some more time. Is there are offers, but people don't join. You offer people, they don't join up, they don't turn up on day one, right? So what kind of interventions you can do? So I'll keep this slide, just take 1 minute to say, let's take offer to joining, right? So if you offered someone as an HR professional, you've given the salary they wanted, the career role they wanted, but still people don't come and join. How will you go through step 1, 2, 3, 4? Right? If you have a notebook, just jot it down. Say, okay, this is probably what I can do, correlating the left and the right. So it's important that when the sharing is happening, you are in that zone of thinking. So just scribble some notes, which you can refer to later and maybe create a better version of this. But I just want you to go through this now. So I'll just take maybe a 30-second pause for you to do that, and then we'll go to the next slide. If you all have any other questions, thoughts, comments, if you're not able to understand what I asked you to do, speak up.
So
Use
Yeah, Shalini, Sumedha, Ranbir, Ankita, anybody for that matter. Do you guys want to ask something? And there's one very important thing which I forgot missing. I forgot mentioning it in the starting, which is that you're supposed to fill a feedback form. Okay, we'll be sharing it now only at the end of the session. And only those who fill up this form will receive the webinar deck and recording. So kindly fill up the webinar feedback form if you want the deck and the recording. So, mm, yeah, please ask your questions. And
We'll give it 30 seconds more, then
yeah,
go to the next
there's a
slide.
DIY also here, so you can probably make a note of it. You know. Sharmishta, Sumedha, anybody? Ankita, Ranbir.
Okay, so we'll move on. It's already 11:07, so I know it's almost 1 hour already. So the next slide is about where I said we as HR professionals spend the most amount of time, and believe me, I've gone through all of these and lakhs and lakhs of rows of data where you clean up, and that's where your that's where your Excel skills. There's a power cleanup. That's something I'm learning. As we speak in Excel, and a lot of those functions, right, become useful. But I think, see, what's important is so this is my journey, right? As such, saying there's one way that we we have data, or HR organizations have data. When you all start working on HRIS or as HR managers, I know one or two of you, I think, are already working, right? The experience is that, one, how are people able to fill in junk data? So I'll give you examples how this happened, right? So we had campus joiners, and the time that I'm talking of, we used to have at least 15, 20,000, 25,000 campus joiners every year. And as campus joiners, they are largely right undergraduates. To some of them, maybe about few thousands are postgraduates. So they don't have something which we all know is important for income tax returns. That's your PAN card. So we used to ask them, saying, "Okay, fill up your PAN card information in the joining document, along with other information." So many of them would leave it blank because they don't have a PAN card, right? Even though we told them in college when we went for the placements and carry your PAN card, anyone can get in India. There's no age limit as such. I think there's a starting limit, but beyond that's very early. In fact, I had my PAN card, I think, when I was 6 years age. Now they wouldn't apply, they wouldn't fill up, so they would leave it blank. Blank data is a problem for us. Blank data, which is your missing data, if you see in that first bullet here, it's 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 not just it's not just wrong data. There's no data, and no data is scary, let me tell you, right? You should get scared if you don't have any data. Second, um, people said people started giving, I mean, these same campus joiners, people are innovative and creative, right? So they would give their parents' PAN number in the form. That's wrong data, right? And then after, let's say, 6 months, they will come back and give their own PAN card information, because that by then they would have received salary, or they realized that they have to go. Bank probably asked them, saying, "No, no, you're getting salary, you give these documents and all of that." So you give the data. What typically starts happening is, now, how did we address this entire thing is, first of all, people didn't know. Um, what's the implication of not giving the right information. But even before that, I think there was a huge cleanup. So as HR professionals, what should we do as best practices? Address the missing information bit upfront, which means the system where they're entering PAN card, don't let them move ahead to the next set of information if they don't enter a PAN card. And that's what PAN number, right? And that's what happened, and that's where people started giving their parents information, right? So it was made mandatory. So use some of these things, saying make the fields mandatory. You would have seen a lot of these things in many of the forms, right? How do you validate information that comes in? Now that's a different process, but I'm saying have validation processes, simple validation processes also possible when you're collecting data itself. Let's say the date format that you see is one of the things. I'm telling you, I've handled data filled up by the top. I mean, the pass outs from top ranked institutes in India, engineering, management, all of them. Believe me, people can be extremely creative about how they write dates. Once I had made a list of what were the different kinds of date input I received as part of the payroll. I had received 32 different kinds of 32 different ways of writing a date. But all of that is junk for me because I have to now clean it up because my payroll system only understands certain data sets, right? What you see here, and the system has these, right? So when I went back and said, okay, this is what is happening, then my HR head, shared services head said, hey, let's build a system to collect data. Don't collect data anymore in Excel files. So we build a system, we build the validation in the system saying, this is the only way you enter a data. These are two formats. Now you decide which format you want and put in the data. So build in validations in the entry or the data input layer itself. The other thing is if you see these inconsistent job titles, this is not just about job titles. You will feel this across any data. So some of the best practices here is give a drop down. You would have seen that, let's say, which industry do you come from? Let's say, what is your best title, right? Many of these things you fill up forms and all, right? Some of the places you may not have all the information, so it's always good to include in options like others, and then give a place to input or a free text. But I'm saying as HR professionals, now that we know all of this happens and now that we know that data cleanliness is important, I think a lot of these things we should do upfront. So when you're looking at data, when you're building forms, when you're building systems, when you're sending out an Excel file, don't give guidelines. Don't write 20 lines saying do this, do this, don't do this, don't do this. People don't read any of those. Build it into the Excel. Even Excel and a lot of these tools, data collection tools, have the option of building these data validations. Learn them, apply them, so that you don't end up in a situation like having junk data. Even then you will have it, and you will spend a lot of time cleaning it up. So there are macros possible. There are, let's say, even today there are tools coming up. The difficulty with HR data is you can't just take that data and put it into today I cannot take one of the client's data set, right? And put that into a personal chat GPT window that I have and say, clean up this data. That's data breach. I cannot take the data out from the client environment into my environment. Very important for all of us to remember. So it's not very easy for us to get data cleaned up beyond the client system. And the other thing that happens is that so Prarthana is part of that journey. Is you will find a lot of very good sales data when you look at any of these courses that you do. No, a lot of these courses, if you go and do HR analytics and all of these, you'll find a lot of examples which are very good with sales data. The sales data is common for a private limited or an LP company. They have to publish sales data, part of their reporting, company reporting. HR data, you will not find many of those
Your
good
Shalini
data.
is saying that
Yes,
is
go
it
ahead.
entering into HRMS fully automated or some of it is manual?
When the data comes in from, so it's both actually. Believe me, many organizations have the first entry point during the joining. And unless some data, let's say, expires, so let's say, like I mentioned, passport information expires over a period of time, all of these have to be manual, right? Because finally, it's whose data? It's the employee's data. It's the individual's data. It's Abhinandan as an employee who's coming and filling up the data. It's my information I'm giving to the organization to be used for organizational purposes. I'll give you a very nice case story at the end as to why, how this was maintained in one of the situations. But it's mostly manual at the first entry point, and that's why we need validations. Beyond that, organizations are moving away from manually entering data. So let's say you fill up the data in the onboarding tool, which is part of your pre-onboarding form fill up, right? So today, most organizations don't have a manual data where you fill up. Those days are gone. They all have either Google Forms or forms systems to fill up data. So that part is digitized. Now that data translating into your HRIS, that ideally should not be manual. If someone is doing it manually, figure out a way to translate that data from the onboarding form or the tool into the system. That is where I think our roles as HR analysts, HRIS become important, right? We need to figure out ways to not touch the data. Take the data as is, put it there, open it up for validation. And for that matter, if it means that someone sits and validates against a document, so be it. In fact, how we identified people are giving parents information in the PAN was when people started giving PAN and all of it. Obviously, what happens is with the PAN, what does it have? What do organizations do with the PAN? So typically in payroll, what happens? There's a compensation that needs to be paid out. There's a taxation element, right? Which taxation or the finance team takes care. They will hold back your tax deduction at source, which is your TDS, which is your IT, typically the income tax. They will give you your take home salary or give us our take home salary. They will hold back the tax element as applicable. They will go to the income tax authorities and deposit that tax. Now, what do you mean when I say deposit the tax? When they deposit the tax, it has to be against some number, someone, right? It has to be Abhinandan's tax that I'm depositing. So how does that reconciliation happen? Not by name. It happens by the PAN number because there can be 20,000 or millions of Abhinandan Mukerjees, right? So they take the PAN, and that's why it's important to have one PAN, right? So they go and say, okay, this is the PAN. Against this PAN, I'm depositing this TDS, which I deducted and withheld from the employee's salary. What happens at the end of the year? Organizations issue something that is called a Form 16. Form 16 is a validation that I went and submitted the organization submitted the tax that they deducted, because I could actually mess up with that also, right? So they go and give the Form 16 to the employees. Employees come back, they go to the IT portal, they fill up something that is called income tax returns. So if you look at a cycle, I get salary, tax getting deducted by organization goes and deposits to income tax. They give me a form at the end of the year after the fiscal year gets over. I take that form, I go to the income tax website and say, this tax was deducted, this is my total income. Is there anything else I need to pay? Then I pay, and then that's how a income tax cycle continues, right, year on year. Now, what happened is people were giving someone else's PAN, and 6 months later they went into the system and updated the PAN number as to their own PAN number. Now, what happened? The initial 6 months TDS got deposited against their father's PAN. And then when someone came and asked for a change, we realized that that was a wrong PAN that was given. And at the end of the year, then what will happen? Who will get the benefit of the tax deducted? The father, right? Not the employee. So they didn't get it. They started making noise. Said, sorry, you gave the PAN. And then a validation process was brought in saying for every PAN number that is entered, that is received as an input from the employee or the new joiner, was validated against the actual PAN document. These days, it's very easy to do that because of your, Aadhaar PAN validation, and that's the entire cycle of linking Aadhaar to PAN and all of that that government has brought in has made these things easier. So today it's very easy to do that, linkage. But finally, someone had to sit and do that. So if the entry point is a manual and a validation has to be done, that has to be done. But migrating data across systems in the organization should never be manual data or a manual process. It should always be done either through an upload or API calls, whatever linking systems. That's completely a no-no if it's manual. We'll move a little fast. This part of module 2. I think yeah. So module 2. Many of these, when we share, if you get this, I think these are just 5 areas, very simple areas that we are talking of. But there are many other formula tool, and many of you may know much more than this. But I'm saying these are examples saying if you don't know these, learn these, right? And start learning saying how to do data cleanups. Okay, module 3. Module 3 is more around Excel and power, in people analytics. I think, like I mentioned, I think we already have people doing projects. If you all want to do any hands-on project, feel free to reach out to Prarthana. And or this email ID, what you all can take. So Satakshi, can you just plug in this email ID in the chat so they can take a note of this and send
Doing it.
a request, right? So FresherRank email ID, write to us. We are happy to see what your interest areas are there and align with any of the projects that come up. So that's module 3. I don't want to get into module 3 because it's more of hands-on, and we can never give gyan and learn, this sort of do and learn. Quickly moving to module 4, right? What's behind, all of that? What's the story that's coming out? It's important for all of us to appreciate that, understand that, and then come up with the story. So if you see why storytelling, obviously, people can't. So, like you see on the right? Attrition data in sales is 24%, right? That's definitely data because that's coming out from actually what's going on. Then what do I do with it? How do I address it? Is it high? Is it low? Is it comparable to the market? And then I, as a CXO, right? How do I manage this? So there has to be a story, right? Uh, and we have to connect multiple data sets. So what we recommend is, if we see this, there has to be few things, right? Saying again, follow that maturity model, right? What's happening? What is causing that to happen? And then what can we do about it, right? What happens next is we already know, right? As part of the data, what can happen. But then what can we do? Now that fully put together brings out a story. So I think I have the story. Yeah. So if you see this, right, what we are saying is for that same data, let's say that we saw in the previous slide, that 24%. So let's say we are saying we are going a little more in detail. So we are saying, okay, what's the metric? The metric says, okay, this is the data, there's attrition data, and monthly attrition, let's say, is 6.4%, right? Now, so what? So then we can go back and compare and say, okay, it is highest in few months, amongst few months. It is, for new hires, it is for a particular business unit. In fact, these days we even go saying, okay, in the business unit, which team, which skill set, which manager, which location. So I was calling out all of these, right? So go down to that detail and then come back and say, okay, now this is something that I think we can do. So the third row that you see is around, so let's redesign the onboarding, and the 30, 60, 90-day assimilation workflow or the program, because it's for new joiners and probably something is going wrong, right? We're not able to retain them. So there is something that we all should do. I mean, this is something that we all should do. Follow that step, and you can take any one HR metric. In next few slides, I have few key HR metrics listed, and you could pick up any one of them and do this, right? In fact, these days you can just put this into ChatGPT, and it will give you some recommendations. But actually going and doing it yourself is the important part, right? Because finally, you're still handling people. Yeah, so I think this is the case study that we wanted to share. When we share the slides, feel free to go through this and come back to us with any more information or a particular story right, that you want to present. I'm skipping this in the interest of time, but I think this is an activity we wanted to do in the session, provided we had ability to do a little bit of groups and all of that. But when we share it, I think it's important that you just don't use any of these tools to do it. Understand what's going on at the background, right? So that CHRO is asking why is this happening will come in only from, let's say, multiple inputs. Organizations largely used to do exit interviews. Believe me, organizations have started doing stay interviews. They just don't want to know why people are leaving or what made them to leave. They also want to know why people are staying back, because that gives them much more information of what is working. Exit interview gives information of what's not working. So that was one of the things that had come up in the last 1 or 2 years. Organizations started doing the stay interview, right? So you know, think of all of these and put together the story, right? Ha. Yeah. So module 5 is more around a little bit of deep dive, saying, okay, if you pick up any of these talent matrix areas, right? So let's say attrition, uh, you need to get into the details. You need to understand what trends are happening. So for one of the organizations that we work with, I mean, one of our clients, they have something that they call a ENPS. So ENPS is what? Net Promoter Score. So if you ask your employees, will you refer the organization to your friends, family, network? Will you want others to come and work for it? Are you happy about working in this organization? These kind of questions. So finally, some people say, yes, I will promote the company. Some people say, no, I will not promote the company. And each one of them have their reasons of doing it. And some of them don't respond, right? They either don't say yes or no. So so the promoters, detractors, and then there are people who are not responding, right? Now, the point is we need to pick each one of these up and see what's happening. So let's say for a particular year, 2025, we are seeing some trends, right? Again, we've done all the grouping and everything. Then we said, okay, can we go back to 2024 and see what this same group of people said? It need not be the same people, but the same cohort of people. So less than 6 months, uh, particular level in a particular business unit under a particular manager. What was the consolidated input from that group versus the consolidated input from this year's group? What has changed, right? So you go into the details, look at trends, go into multiple level of details, right? So a lot of these things, right? If you look at one single matrix, it may be the information for you, but you can actually look at patterns and why it's happening if you put a lot of these together. And that's why we have these dashboards these days, right? Where it's a lot more visual. And again, I definitely have to credit Prarthana, I think, Show Me and Shom Shubhra, right? Prarthana, I think we have been working a lot on these in what we are trying to build a good data set and scenarios for HR matrix. We've been working on this so that a lot of HR professionals can look at real life HR matrix and not just that sales or matrix when it comes to analytics. Okay, now this is interesting. I'll spend few minutes on this. If you look at this function wise, we've tried to list 3 or 5 top matrix, right? That typically organizations look at. Now, each one of these, right, have obviously there's a formula behind each one of these, how it's calculated. But what is also important is what does it give us, right? If you look at the recruitment, it gives. So these are many of these are actually HR HR matrix, right? It's not people matrix always. Employee engagement, which you see at the center and the bottom table, is actually people matrix. So it's people analytics. Some of them are HR matrix, which is a HR process efficiency. So how many, what's your external hiring rate, your recruitment source breakdown? These are all the process metrics. So what I'm trying to impress upon you is the HR analytics, people analytics, workforce analytics, the three terms that we saw. You will find metrics against each one of these, and you have to obviously correlate a lot of this, right? People could be leaving because your offer to joining ratio could be low, right? So people are not joining as many as you offer. It could be because your onboarding process is not efficient. So if you are not tracking your process matrix and your people matrix together, then you will not get the benefit out of the HR matrix or the entire HR analytics initiative or the roadmap that you have. Many organizations think I will just get some feedback and some track people matrix and then be done with it. They stay away from driving process metrics. But process efficiency will only bring in people happiness, right, or people engagement. So a lot of those are related. So my urge to you would be take each one of these, go through the definitions, understand what it means, and then you could come back to us if you want to know more on any of these areas. And like I mentioned, we have at least 500 areas that we can expose you to. But those are hands-on projects you all have to engage in. Moving on, if you look at, yes, there is performance management, career management, training. Productivity again is something which is very, very business driven. Organizations track them very closely. All of that. Uh, uh, Compensation benefits, demographic is something which is very important. Typically, there can be various breakdowns of what kind of people work for your organization. It could be diversity, it could be location wise, a lot of those, right? What background they have, what skill sets they have, a lot of those, right? So these are a lot of the matrices which organizations typically start handling, start tracking upfront. Okay, so this is module 5, and if you want in any of these, like I mentioned, if you're keen to do a project, we have short projects, but that's what will give you the deep dive, right? Will the deeper understanding of HR matrix as such. The last thing that I want to quickly cover is data privacy, data protection, right? So I mentioned about GDPR. So on the screen, you see two different data privacy frameworks. So the right one is actually the PDPA for Singapore. On the left, you see GDPR, which is the European Union. It's US has their own data protection, data privacy laws. In fact, now as we speak, and I will include that here when I send out the deck, India also has a data privacy regulation, right? Now, how much of that is getting applied and all of that, I think we all have to wait and see the journey of the regulation to the application. But what it also means is, so two quick stories that I want to share before closing. One is back in 2012, that's when GDPR started coming in. There was there was an email that I received that an UK employee was asking us few questions, saying how many people in the organization has access to my data, where is my data stored, and who has access to the documents. Can you give me a list of the documents versus HR function who has access? I want the people names who have access and a lot of these kind of questions. Now, I was surprised at that point in time. I was anyways handling the HRIS for almost 2 years by that time, but I never got that kind of an email. And I walked up to my boss and asked him, "Are we really expected to answer this?" He said, "Absolutely." So we took some time, we figured out, and then I think one other question was, how long do you hold my data? Because if I leave tomorrow, then you don't need my data anymore, right? Why? How long do you keep the data in the system after I leave or after the purpose of the data is solved? So there are these questions that all of us should understand are extremely relatable, extremely important for us to know right from day one. So why did I share the systems list? In each of those systems, you have to configure these. Who is the data owner? Who has access to the data? Believe me, there was a role in Cognizant which was handled by someone who at least has a 10 to 12 years of HR experience. That that particular role was only doing access management. Who has access to what data? Approve the access, give the access, monitor the access, take the access away if the person leaves, moves into a different role, and hell used to break loose if someone has access to data that they don't need to have access to. HR systems are like crazy, believe me. Any organization for that matter. The important part here is the size of the organization doesn't matter. Information data is key, right? And we all have this PII, which is personally identifiable information. Absolutely critical for us to know that none of those can be shared with anyone without the person's actual consent. And this is where I come to the last story. So if you see there's a consent on top, right? Accountability, who has access, retention, all of these elements called out very nicely on the right. The last story that I want to share is around this data protection is all of you are aware of this. During COVID, uh, we used to have these apps, right, which will track the who's nearby. Forgetting what they used to call it in Singapore, but I was in Singapore that time. It was 3.5 years. So typically there was a theft in a mall, right? There was a shoplifting theft, and this person was taken into custody. And the typically the these tracking apps, right? During COVID, everyone had to declare or give access to the location details to that app. So that if two people are very near and one of them is COVID positive, the other person who's not COVID positive gets a alert that, okay, stay away, and some of those. So contact tracing is what they used to call this, right? So through one of those contact tracing apps, it was identified that somehow the CCTV and some of those things were not available. It was identified that this person who committed the theft was in that shop because other people's contact tracing app gave that information that this person was nearby, and the case was built. The court actually rejected that entire data, saying you can prove it whatever way you want that the person was there, but the contact tracing app was not meant for this purpose. So very important, it's a generic use case, and I don't know. Finally, I don't remember what happened as an outcome of that case, but the court did not accept that evidence because they said, hey, you collected that data just to alert people about their health scenario, not to prove that someone was there and then validate whether the person has committed a theft or not. So the purpose for which we are collecting data, the limit or the time limit for which data is collected, and all of those are equally important. So as HR professionals, I think we all should be extremely careful about all these things that we do, right? Organizations, people data can be extremely critical. So thanks. I think what I felt is, just rather than giving you all some 20 matrix and saying this is what you all can do and this is what it means, I wanted to give a holistic picture about HR analytics, people analytics, workforce analytics as a foundation, so that now you know a lot of things, right? And you all can then decide which one to really pursue, right? Thanks. If there's any question, I'd be happy to take it. But that's all I had from a sharing standpoint.
Thank you, sir, for sharing so many of your personal experiences also with us. So now we are open for questions, and I guess this is the time the feedback form will also be shared.
Yeah, so I had a question.
Yes, please.
It's a very risky question, actually.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, I'm being very candid over here. So, sometimes what happens is, I mean, a lot of times these AI tools,
Mm.
especially ChatGPT, is made for making our lives easier. I
Yeah.
mean, in my brain, why would I spend 5 minutes on something if I can,
Correct.
just get it done by ChatGPT in 30 seconds?
Yep.
A very basic understanding of mine. So, suppose
Right.
I'm given this Excel sheet of data to clean up or do whatever with it. And I have a client who has given it to me. I have sworn to all privacy and everything. But in my mind, how do I know? I mean, I can just upload it to ChatGPT and get it done in seconds. How will the client know? So, that. I mean, I understand as an HR professional, I have to have that integrity. No, I have to do it. I can't upload to ChatGPT. But I mean, a person can easily do that, right?
Yeah.
So how do we
So
ensure it's not done like that? That's all.
yeah. So obviously, I think organizations do a lot of stuff with their, to protect this data, environment. So if I give examples, right? So let's say there are a few clients that we work with who are okay in we using our own infrastructure, right, while accessing their systems. Smaller organizations where they go with a trust approach, right? Saying we trust you that you will not do this, and we obviously sign NDAs, right? So one of the few things that starts happening is you sign an NDA, which is non-disclosure. You signed all those confidentiality promises and all of that, right? So that is one. But yeah, like you said, people are creative and they want to become more efficient. So one of the ways organizations, in fact, some of our clients do is they're very specific. We can only do it in their environment, which means they give us laptops, right? And we only have access. They will configure their email ID and all the data access only on that laptop, which means, and there is no chat GPT access there. There is no Gemini access there. So it's a lot of restricted environment in what they have signed up as an enterprise and what they do not recommend using. Uh, and and there are many ways in which organizations block a lot of these applications. Let's say they have something else which they have signed up as an enterprise, so they make that tool available, and you can obviously go into that tool and do this, to the extent it can be done. So there's a technology, solution to it, but a lot of this is definitely still human, and that is why you continue to see that data breaches happen, right? Data breach is not very uncommon even in these days. But yes, as HR professionals, I think it's important for us to continue reiterating, saying, see, there is definitely a lot you can do by bringing in people, penalizing them, taking that stick, right, and going around. But if you don't bring out that ownership, saying, do you really think you should do this with others' data? Because you wouldn't want this to happen with your own data, right? So I think there's a combination of things that you make people understand and respect the data, and many organizations choose to take the technology pathway, but they still have that final few yards, which is the trust element. And to answer your other question is why would I do it? So that's why organizations have started signing up in many of these tools as an enterprise version. Now, in that enterprise version, you don't have to worry because that enterprise version is limited to that enterprise, right? Now, ChatGPT as an enterprise or a solution provider is saying if you pay up for the enterprise version, which is very high in cost, then we will not share the data with others. And whether they're sharing it or not is their IT team's validation that happens from time to time. Or let's say an audit team does that from time to time. So there are multiple of these checkpoints that also come in saying, have I shared? So I'll give you an example what happened in, I think, way back. I can't again name the organization, but uh, this HRIS person got a call saying, hey, I'm at this client location, just walking into the meeting. I'm the HR head. He, in fact, gave the correct name and said, "Can you quickly send me the HRIS into my email ID? But I am outside, so I don't have access to the official email. Just send it to my personal email. This is the email." And he gave a exactly correct email ID also in line with the name. The HRIS person broke down the file. It was a big file. into 4 parts, 70,000 people, shipped it out to the email, personal email. One of the very big, one of the big data breaches that happened, during that time for that organization. Now, what organization started realizing is that okay, there was an email sent with employee data. There was an IT tool that was deployed saying what emails are being sent out outside the organization environment. So from the official email to any non-official email, what emails are going out. That's how they caught the breach first. When they caught the breach, they identified the person who did it. Now all of this spanned out. Then what did they finally do? They brought in these mandatory learning programs, which everyone has to go through in the organization, saying, okay, what are do's and don'ts? And while there could be checkpoints, audits, validations, the education also has to continue because sometimes people don't remember or they're not thinking, right? And I got my first call, I remember back in 2007 saying, hey, I'm calling from da, and then this person, it's for a marriage proposal. I just want to know whether this person is working in the organization, right? Complete no. You cannot share. There was a police investigation which was going on for one of the employees. The police came to the premises saying, we want to talk to the employee. The HR head said, sorry, you get a warrant and then only you can walk in. Otherwise, I'm not exposing my employee. Irrespective of what case is going on, the employee is my responsibility when he or she is in my premises. So we stopped the police, did not allow. I think 2, 3 days later, they came back with a warrant. Still, we didn't allow. We said, this is not a place for this warrant. It's a personal case. Please go figure out the person when they step outside of office. You don't have jurisdiction in the office. So there are these various elements that you need to be prepared for. So as and when people, face these organizations, face this, they bring it as part of the mandatory learning programs. Many organizations have mandated, let's say every 3 months, if it's critical, every 3 months, someone needs to, certify, take the test, take the assessment, certify. Otherwise, their access is stopped. They can't continue working. So all of those things come in. So it's a mix of all of these to respond to you, Ankita.
One other question is, it's a follow-up question. When HR process like attendance or payroll are automated, who actually sets that up, HR or tech teams, or is it a collaboration?
It's always a
That's
collaboration.
Shalini.
Yeah. So always a collaboration, Shalini, because in my experience of the last 20 years and building systems, managing, maintaining, improving systems, tech teams are not meant to know the functional element. What does that mean? A tech team can write a code. They can they can debug a code. They can deploy a system. They can know when a system performance goes down. But let's say that use case that I shared of PAN number, father's PAN being shared, and what is the implication of father's PAN? Because that was still a valid PAN as far as the system is concerned. As far as PAN, do you know that all PANs have a format, standard format with your name and your date of birth? I don't remember it exactly, but you can go and check it out. Right? I think one of the characters in one of those exact places is the first letter of your one of the names, right? Either the first name or the last name, right? So that format is there. So a tech team will know the format. So the Aadhaar is a 16-digit number, or I think a 12-digit number, or whatever, right? So the tech team will apply those technology aspects, but they will not know, and they're not expected to know what is the functional, output or the implication. That is where HR comes in. That is where the functional folks comes in. In fact, HR also doesn't come in there. We had to bring in the taxation team in there, right? Saying, hey, it's okay, right? They said, no, it's not okay, right? Obviously, HR, as HR also, we understood it's not okay. But what's the actual implication? For that year, those people who gave the wrong PAN or father's PAN did not get the tax credit for that year, right? We could not do anything, right? So that's where I think a functional expertise or a domain expertise and knowledge, right, has to be collaborative with technology or technical knowledge, and then both of them come together.
Um, okay, with that, I think we have the end of our questions, and thank you everyone for filling out this feedback form to get the recording. Again, a reminder, please go through the chat. There's a link for feedback form which has been mentioned. Kindly fill it up so that you will be able to receive, the recording. And thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your personal stories and, giving so much details, finer details about data and data management. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Everybody here is mentioning thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay.
Shalini,
Take care.
Shreya, Smith. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
We are ending this session. Thank you, everybody, for being a part with us throughout this session. Hope you gained something from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.